Good morning. It is Thursday, June 18th, and welcome to the Sociality Squared Director's Cut Facebook Live, where I share commentary on content that we produce at Sociality Squared and just general social media news out in the world. Today, the topic will be that I'll be diving into more is time, burnout, and consistency related to social media marketing and also kind of in general. So stay tuned for that. So I really appreciate you joining and watching and spending some time with me. I know there's a million things that you could be doing, so I appreciate that you're choosing to spend 30 minutes here, whether you're live with me or listening to the recorded version. So we're in week 13 or so of stay at home, lockdown, phase one, week two of phase one, I think, here in New York City. And what I've said since the beginning of my broadcast, my heart is with your heart. And what I said last week, and I'll continue to say, is especially to the Black community, my heart is with your heart. And even in 1 week, just so much has happened right now, and even more Black lives have been lost that shouldn't. There's a lot to be done. And with just everything happening here on this broadcast, the Black Lives Matter has kind of overshadowed Pride Month. So I definitely wanted to mention that, we're celebrating Pride Month while at the same time doing the work that we can to support our LGBTQ community. And the two, Black Lives Matter and Pride Month, are so inextricably linked that, everything's interlinked, but the two are inextricably linked. And on the LGBTQ plus side, there were some really good news for workers' protections with the Supreme Court filing in favor of employment protection. So one small thing to celebrate, a big thing to celebrate, but there's definitely so much work to be done. We've lost 2 Black trans lives since George Floyd's killing. And one statistic that I should have known and didn't realize until, this past week or so is that the average lifespan of Black trans women is just 35 years old because they get murdered. This is, I don't even have the right words. I do want to say, when we lift up our most marginalized, which are Black trans women and Black women in the US, and address all of the injustices and the systems that oppress them, you literally lift everyone up, because everything's compounded, like whether it's food, access to education, or healthcare, all of them affect the least marginalized. And if you lift up the least marginalized and everything that the injustices and systems that oppress them, like, you fix the system for everyone. So I wanted to mention that because that's come up in a couple different conversations I've had this past week. And if this is your first time watching this broadcast, I'm Helen Todd, the co-founder and CEO of Sociality Squared. We're a social media agency that understands the magic of people coming together around what they value and love. In the comment section for this video, I posted a link where you can connect with Sociality Squared, and I'm Helen's Travels on Instagram and Twitter. And next week is our monthly newsletters coming out, so if you haven't subscribed, please do. That's the featured link for this live, and also I'll share the link. It's in the comments. So today we have just a little bit of S2 news, our topic of time, burnout, and consistency, and some social media news as well. And of course, we always try to end on a positive note, which is the inspiration. So S2 News, I've kind of just mentioned it. Sign up for our newsletter. It's coming out next week. It's only one time a month, so we respect your inbox. It's kind of the summation of all the key points from this month, and kind of looking forward. And then on June 24th, I'm also doing the second installment of the International Leica Society's Instagram course 101. Very, very basic for beginners to Instagram. But if that's something that interests you, you can sign up to become a member for the organization and participate. And if you haven't liked Sociality Squared on Facebook, do that, and you can get updates when I go live. Okay, so on to today's topic: time, burnout, and consistency. It's hard actually coming up with topics. I mean, I'm supposed to be blogging about them on Tuesdays, but I'll get back into the habit of that. In terms of just so much happening and so much to unpack right now, and a lot of people are asking, what should I do to help make the biggest impact? And one thing, whether it's social media marketing or addressing being anti-racist, it is a marathon. It is not a sprint, and we just need to have a little bit of perspective on time. So that's why I kind of want to explore a little bit more today. And I know time is a blur for me. It's kind of crazy that we're almost halfway through this year. I've barely left my apartment this year due to COVID, or well, I guess since March. And in some ways it's gone by really fast. And then other ways, like last week feels like a lifetime ago. It's just this, I feel like we're in this experiment of relativity because so much is happening so quickly and compounded. Or maybe better, it's like we're all living in a Black Lives Matter, or yeah, Black Lives Matter Black Mirror episode. That would be great to get out of. So yeah, it's just, so in thinking about time, and everyone is like, a lot of brands and companies are rushing to put out statements of this is how we're going to put actions, well, hopefully they're putting actions and not just words behind being anti-racist. And we have to, do these things, but also realize that we can't get burnt out and that it is for the long haul. I mean, there's been people who've already been working on this for decades. The Pride Month, this is its 51st year of pride, of lifting up these voices that are demanding equality, and there's still so much work to be done. And one thing, in the onslaught of all the news and content that we're consuming, and this especially applies to social media managers who it's their job to be online every day. But given that so many people are working from home or just consuming so much content, just that there's so much out there and so much news, and trying to balance, mental health with staying informed. One thing that I think is really important is giving everyone time to unplug and be disconnected from the internet, and find ways to just not think about heavy-hearted subjects, because we're going to get burnout. Like social media burnout is a thing anyway. Like we actually set expectations with our clients that we don't do this 24/7. We have systems in place for monitoring overnight and depending on the account, we can do shifts and stuff. But we use tools to help monitor for key things and flags things when it's after work hours. I don't expect anyone on my team to be plugged in 24/7. It's not healthy. It doesn't serve the person on the team. And if they're not able to perform well, it doesn't serve our clients or our clients' communities. So that's something that we're really strict on. And even vacation time, like when people go on vacation, even staycations in 2020, they we don't bother them. Like I so believe in unplugging. And so I just wanted to kind of bring that up today for the broadcast on thinking about time and giving ourselves time to process this and time to disconnect for our own, mental health and sanity. Because, this, who knows what else is going to happen, or I don't even want to ask the question because it's just who knows. But it's an election year. There's a lot happening in the world, a lot of change, and it's no change ever happens overnight. So we just have to have perspective on time and to pace ourselves and to give ourselves just to give ourselves time and a break on this so that we can do the work and be consistent. And one analogy that we use in social media all the time, which is, all of these analogies kind of apply to social media. It's about people to these bigger picture things. It's like going to the gym. Like, clients or potential clients that come to us, it's like, okay, I want 1 million followers. It's like, you're not going to get that in a week or a month. Maybe if you spend millions of dollars, but it's like going to the gym. You have to go consistently, regularly, and put in time and do the work to see the results. And I think that applies to social media marketing and really anything outside of it. And one thing that's interesting with the gym analogy is when you build muscle, that's actually really, there's discomfort there. Like your muscles are tearing and rebuilding, and you're pushing your body further than it's been, and it hurts. But afterwards, you're stronger, you're more fit, and we're going through a lot of discomfort right now. And I kind of mentioned this in last week's broadcast, but there's growth there. So if we focus on the growth and the result of doing the hard work, then it makes, doing it a lot easier. You start to look forward to it. And one thing too that is really important with social media marketing, and I think in general, is consistency. Whether it's consistently going to the gym to meet your health goals, as one analogy, or consistently showing up and sticking to publishing schedules for social media marketing. Whether that's me going live consistently every Thursday morning at 7:30 a.m., whether a brand is publishing, daily Facebook posts or weekly Instagram lives, whatever it may be, consistency is so important because consistency builds trust. If I came on here, when I wanted on Thursday mornings, you wouldn't know what day to show up or what not, and you wouldn't well, she might not. I'm not gonna spend my time wondering what's going to happen. So consistency is really important. So when we're thinking about these bigger goals outside of social media marketing of anti-racism and the goals that we want to achieve and the change, being consistent of what we're doing and matching what we say to our actions are going to be really important. Not only, to build trust among our teams as companies that are working towards this, but also to build trust among our communities and specifically among our Black communities in their relationship to the brands. because there's so many brands right now posting a lot of, great things, but what are their actions going to really do? And we talk a lot about at Sociality Squared value alignment, of making sure core business practices are aligned with the values, and then market it out from there. And that goes the same thing with all of the statements about addressing sexism, racism, all the isms, um, that how you build trust is being consistent with your actions to match what you say that you're going to do. So that's really important. And another thing, I was watching related to time, which is just I guess two interesting things related to time. There's one video by this physicist. Uh, I didn't find the link before this, but where he talks about time kind of being a uniquely human thing, where our brains are actually time machines, and that anything else doesn't really register before and or after. Most, as we understand it, other organisms in the world just experience the present. And I always thought that was kind of interesting to think about. And I was also thinking about last night before I was going to bed, just in thinking about time, we have memories, and then we kind of are imagining the future. And I think we're having an imagination problem right now, of like imagining a great future. We know what we don't want. We have all these problems, and we're kind of like stuck in the murk of, and the pain and the hurt of everything that's going on right now. But like, what is that future that we want? Over the rainbow. What does that look like? So I invite everyone to kind of think about what is that ideal future look like, so we can start imagining. And imagining is kind of planning in a certain way. Um, but back to the storytelling of memories, and how we tell things, our story, and the narratives, that how we explain our history. And we're all looking, I shouldn't say all, I'm very much talking through my white lens through some of this, which I acknowledge. Like if you take the statues, the Confederate statues right now, some of us are looking at those through a different lens, that if we're properly listening to our Black friends and family and loved ones, where we're looking at our memories and history and kind of reevaluating them. And we get to choose the narrative that we want to tell, and how we get to build the future. So I think that's kind of really interesting. And that we get to help collectively script the narratives of the future. And that's storytelling. We all, like, social media marketing is about storytelling, but everyone is human, and we're innately storytellers. That's stories, how we connect, how we with each other, the stories we tell about ourselves are so important. And it's how we digest what's happening in the world, is through story. So another really interesting film, which is in the inspiration, which I'll share another little tidbit from this at the end, so stay tuned at the end, was I was watching a really interesting interview with Lana Wachowski. And her, along with her sister Lily, are the creative geniuses behind The Matrix. Both are trans women, and that's also really interesting in having new information and looking back at something with different lens. Because when they created The Matrix, their identities were men, and they've since changed. And you have a film about these dual realities, and the whole series, like exploring, what is real. So that part's interesting too. But one of the things that they talk about in the interview related to time specifically is Lana was describing, you know, like how they were exploring the delimitations of reality and how to express that in film. And, as content creators, one of the things she pointed out is that every camera movement um, expresses movement through time and space. And one of the things that they wanted to express in The Matrix is pushing the boundaries of reality. And what came of it is that iconic shot that everyone knows, when the bullets are shot towards Neo and he goes back and is in like slow motion, dodging all of these bullets that had never been done before or seen before, and is so iconic to film. So I thought that was really interesting in time, the limits of time, but even how we express it as content creators. And Lana and Lily, with the help, I forget who came in with this idea that really helped bring it alive, was just so interesting in how we express time. But the main takeaway for today's topic is we're all moving through this moment in time together, and it is a lot to unpack and process, and we have to pace ourselves and give ourselves time and know that this is a marathon and not a sprint. And I invite everyone watching this to give yourself time to unplug, give your team members like almost required time to be offline, and be consistent, but bake that into your timeline too. So lots of love to everyone watching. Okay, a little bit, we have about 7 minutes left. I want to go over some news and then share another little inspiration from Lana. Okay, so on the news front, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg wrote an op-ed, interestingly, in USA Today. I was actually curious why he picked USA Today. I'm sure it was very intentional on their current stance on what they're doing about the election. And Casey Newton's newsletter is such a great source for this information. So I will include that link, and a lot of this that I read, these updates came from him. So the news that was announced, it was actually originally announced in January and it's just coming to fruition, but they are announcing that if users don't want to see political ads, that they can turn those off. Which is a quasi good thing. One of the things that Casey pointed out, which is there's like this perpetual, I'll just read what he said, perpetual tug of war between the people who think there should be allow more speech or less. Everyone, like all of these, the trade-offs between everything, between speech and safety, Democrats or Republican, absolutists, and the people who think there ought to just outright be a toggle. There's not a great answer, but this is one step that Facebook's taking, and some of the trade-offs of not having or having people opt out of political ads is that it could, or a consequence could, put organic content being more clickbaity or whatnot, or for those who don't need ads that already have large audiences, still could do a lot of false information and a lot of link bait content and have it go viral organically. So I mean, it's a step. I don't know if it's the best step. For me, the takeaway is, and for some of the other articles I wanted to mention today, There's not a right answer, and we all just have to stay super vigilant between now, especially those in the U.S. and are voting, and vote locally. New York City, we're in early voting now, or New York State. Um, is that we just have to stay vigilant on the sources that we're seeing, and as individuals, the content that we're consuming and resharing and amplifying. Um, and there was another a bill that was passed by the Senate Republicans to limit Section 230 protections. And when I first read that, I was like, oh, that's actually good. It means that people can hold Facebook and Twitter accountable for selectively enforcing their own terms of service. But it's not actually that great, because it it still lets all the companies define their own moderation policies. They just have to stick to it and apply it evenly. So that is a good step in the right direction. However, there's no regulation over how they moderate content aside from super illegal stuff like child abuse and that type of thing due to the First Amendment. Um, so it's still, I think I mentioned this last week or 2 weeks ago, it's still kind of fractured by each platform, largely to self-regulate themselves at this point. So this is, again, I think a good step, but it's a little step. And just in general, there's just a lot to be done with these platforms across the board. And again, we just have to stay as individuals and companies vigilant about what we're reading, consuming, and amplifying, especially against the backdrop of misinformation and bad actors, which I think I might mention on every broadcast, that we cannot lose sight that there are bad actors looking to take advantage of everything happening this year, and especially around the elections. Okay, a few other quick things. Twitter started rolling out audio tweets on iOS, which is interesting. I'm excited to, I haven't seen any of those, but want to test those out. On the misinformation front, Facebook groups, where did this come from? Wired, a lot of things that made them attractive, like privacy and community, also makes them super dangerous to spread information. So again, stay vigilant. There was another interesting article by the New York Times that came out, I guess it was on the 8th, about China using Twitter and bots to kind of amplify their messaging, which just speaks to Twitter having a bot problem that they have still yet to resolve. And again, stay vigilant on that front. And then there was an article in the Wall Street Journal on social media becomes battleground over days of street protests. Again, stay vigilant. There's just so many vying stories and misinformation out there. And a lot of the articles around these things are at least from the social media lens, is just kind of highlighting all of the misinformation and cracks in what we're seeing. Okay, so we're at 8. I want to try to keep this to 30 minutes. Since it's Pride Month, and I do want to fully acknowledge that here at Sociality Squared. And I mentioned Lana and Lily, who are 2 trans women that I'm really incredibly inspired by. They not only did the Matrix series. Oh, and that was one thing I wanted to share when I was kind of poking around online last night. I saw Matrix 4 on IMDb that I think is supposed to come out 2022. So that's really exciting. I don't know what they're going to do with that. And I didn't search to read articles on it. But they've produced so many incredible movies. And one of the things that Lana pointed out in this interview that I watched um, was on aesthetics and symbols. And she made a point to say, like, this is something that no movie critic really talks to, but they're so important. And this is a quote that I kind of transcribed is aesthetics are the DNA of art. You understand artistic intent through aesthetics. It's the way artists reveal themselves through the choices they make aesthetically. So I thought that was really interesting. And I've rewatched parts of the interview a few times over this week because she says a lot of very thought provoking things, and even the way how she and Lily like think about problems and paradoxes and exploring questions is just really fascinating. Just kind of how their minds work, and this interview does a great way to kind of hear kind of what they think. So I'll share that link to this. So again, thank you for joining. There's a lot happening in the world, and I appreciate you sharing 30 minutes with me in Sociality Squared this morning. And again, if you haven't, please do like this page and sign up for our newsletter. We'll have our June newsletter coming out next week. And I'll be here again next week, same day, Thursday morning, 7:30 a.m. East Coast time, and hope to see you. Stay safe, stay vigilant. Thanks.